Chapter 1. Class Awakening. Everyone, this is your last awakening ceremony. If you still fail to awaken, prepare to live the rest of your life as an ordinary human attending a normal university. Alternatively, you can dedicate these last few months to improving your cultivation and increasing your chances of entering an academy. The teacher's voice echoed through the room, his tone firm yet measured. Before him stood rows of students, their expressions a mix of anxiety and hope as they listened to him attentively. Among them was Michael. Michael did not belong to this world. 3 weeks ago, he had awakened in this body, a body that coincidentally shared his name. Unlike the Earth, he previously lived in this world, granted its youth aged between the ages of 16 to 18, a chance to awaken a class, a moment that could define their future. More than 2 centuries ago, an apocalypse descended upon this world, bringing spatial rifts that spawned hordes of monsters plunging the world into chaos. Humanity teetered on the brink of extinction until, fortunately, following the apocalypse, the world became digitized for a select few who would later be known as awakeners. Thanks to these awakeners, individuals gifted with extraordinary powers. Thanks to their classes, the apocalypse ended after decades, allowing humanity to finally reclaim their world. As expected, peace returned to the world, but the allure of awakening persisted. These awakeners became figures of importance, and soon it became a dream of every young person aged 16 to 18 to become one. However, becoming an awakener was a rare privilege, granted to only a few, and for this group of 18-year-olds gathered in the hall, this was their last chance to awaken. Michael was nervous as well, just as his peers. Despite having arrived in this world for a mere 3 weeks, he understood the significance of this ceremony. While it wasn't as though all hope would be lost, if he failed to awaken, it was undeniable that no path held more promise than becoming an awakener. Under the nervous gaze of nearly 100 students below the podium, the teacher picked up a file from the table before him and began calling names. Lillian Stone. Yes, sir. The first student called was a young woman. Upon hearing her name, she immediately stepped toward the podium. But perhaps due to her nervousness, she stumbled and fell, drawing a sharp intake of breath from the room. However, no one laughed or made fun of her. On any other occasion they might have, but today, there was no place for mockery. They all feared that they might fare any better than the student who had fallen. The teacher, seemingly accustomed to such mishaps, waited patiently for her to get back on her feet and approach him. When she finally came before him, he wasted no time and gestured toward the transparent orb on the table before speaking evenly. This is your 3rd time here, so you know what to do. Just place your hand on the awakening orb. If there's a reaction, it means you've successfully awakened. If there isn't. The teacher left his words unfinished, but it made the hearts of every student in the room sink. Michael felt it too, though he handled it better than the others. Thanks to his steadied maturity coming from his previous life, a life where he had faced numerous challenges before he succumbed to cancer in his previous life. Michael's eyes watched as Lillian placed her hand on the awakening orb on the table between the teacher and her. From what they had been taught in school, they knew that every awakener gained not only a class which granted them supernatural powers, but also bestowed the ability to connect their consciousness to another world, a mysterious realm filled with treasures, and could quickly enhance their prowess. Though it was often said that this world resembled a game in many ways, it was not. In fact, it was far more complex and enigmatic. The awakening orb itself was said to have originated from that very mysterious world. Just as the teacher said, the girl didn't require any assistance. With a familiarity that made the corner of Michael's eyes twitch slightly, she placed both hands on the awakening orb and waited. Seconds passed, and just as the teacher was preparing to dismiss the girl, who looked like she might burst into tears at any moment due to her disappointment, suddenly froze. Following that, a manifestation in the form of twin swords materialized on her back before disappearing. Lillian Stone has successfully awakened a class martial artist, the teacher announced, his voice tinged with astonishment. His previously stoic expression betrayed clear surprise. For this group of 18-year-olds, the likelihood of awakening was slim, and the teacher had expected any success. But to think that the very first student called up would do so left him momentarily speechless. It was a well-known fact that the best age to awaken a class was 16, as that was when the chances were highest, and their chances of awakening diminished with each passing year. The moment the students heard the teacher's announcement, the previously quiet hall erupted with noise, with excited chatters erupting among the students. Wow, Lillian actually awakened, no way. First come, first served. Damn. Bark. To think the 4th, to last dumbest person in all of Class 3 would awaken. You do realize that awakening successfully doesn't necessarily have anything to do with intelligence, right? Shut up. Of course I know. Can't I just be bitter for a minute? What happened to my freedom to hate? Like his classmates, Michael was pleasantly surprised that the first student to step onto the podium had awakened. No one in their group had expected any of them to awaken, so seeing someone succeed lifted everyone's spirits and reignited a renewed sense of hope within them. However, that newly lit hope was quickly shattered. Mia Keem awakening failed. Bruce Lean awakening failed. One after the other, from the 4th up to the 48. Every student who stepped on the podium failed to awaken, except for the first female student, Lillian. By the end, the once bustling hall had grown eerily silent, save for the soft sobs of those who had failed their awakening. Chapter 2, Cultivation. Michael tried his best to ignore the cries of his classmates echoing around him. Failing to awaken in this world wasn't like failing a college exam back on Earth. On Earth, you could keep trying again, and even failure offered alternative paths, many of which weren't considered worse than attending college. But here, failing to awaken had no equivalent alternatives at all. It was akin to a poor man, burdened with the responsibility of caring for his 2 chronically ill parents, while also supporting a younger sibling in school, betting on 3 different games with a chance to win $1 million each and losing everything. In such a scenario, breaking down in despair and crying wouldn't be unusual. It was inevitable. The scene around Michael now was eerily similar. Most students at Woodstone Public School, 3 came from families living at or below the poverty line. For them, successfully awakening wasn't just a dream, it was a path to their salvation, like having $100 million drop into their lap. But for the students now sobbing, that distant hope of drastically changing their lives had slipped through their fingers 3 times in a row. No wonder so many of them broke down in tears right after failing. Michael tried not to let the dark atmosphere affect him. He forced himself to focus and tried to stay positive. His situation wasn't any better than those around him. If anything, it was worse. In this world, the original owner of his body had been an orphan, living with his overburdened aunt. She was a widow, struggling to care for her own child as well. Together, the family of 3 barely survived on the limited money his aunt managed to earn. For Michael, successfully awakening wasn't just a dream. It was the fastest and perhaps the only way to change his family's fate. Yet his chance of awakening was less than 1%. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of bitterness creep into his thoughts, despite all his efforts. Though he was grateful for the chance to live again, especially in a healthy body, the prospect of living a life in mediocrity stung deeply. Yet, there was nothing he could do about his slim chance of awakening. All he could do was hope for the best. Michael continued to watch one by one students stepped up to the podium, only to fail in their awakening attempts. There were only 86 students in the hall, and since the teacher hadn't assigned a fixed order, Michael's turn could come at any instant, and he could only wait while tension pressed on his chest. Then, just when the teacher in charge of the awakenings began to believe that this batch of students would only produce 1 awakener, the orb on the podium suddenly flared to life and emitted a bright light. The reason for such a reaction was a male student standing before it. Just like Lillian, who had first awakened a manifestation, a standard phenomenon for new awakeners appeared on him. The male student's figure glowed red like a burning fire, and a fiery staff appeared in his hands before disappearing just as quickly. Brian, Leon, has successfully awakened a class. Fire Mage, the teacher announced. Just as it happened after the first awakening, an uproar erupted in the hall. But this time, it was even more intense. Damn, Brian actually awakened. The heavens really aren't fair. I know, right? He's already one of the few students who managed to ignite their life seeds before the college exams. That's rare even in big cities. Fuck! Like his classmates, Michael also had an impression of Brian. At Woodstone Public High School, 3, Brian Leon was one of a few outstanding students who could compete with those from private schools with better resources. His reputation extended beyond the school, earning him recognition throughout Woodstone City. But Brian's fame didn't stem from his academic achievements. Rather, it was his exceptional talent in cultivation that set him apart. Awakening Orb weren't the only piece of technology that Awakeners had brought back from the mysterious realm known as the Land of Origins. They also introduced other technological advancements that significantly boosted the real world. The Land of Origins wasn't exclusive to humans. Various civilizations of different races had long thrived there. In fact, compared to them, humans could almost be considered newcomers to that world. These civilizations had already harnessed the Land of Origins to significantly advance their societies. Using their unique methods, Awakeners managed to bring something extraordinary to this world: cultivation. Cultivation was a method that allowed ordinary people to gain supernatural powers, though not at the level of awakeners. Cultivators couldn't progress as quickly, become as powerful, or enter the land of origins. Brian practiced the breathing technique of the night cultivation system. With his considerable talent in cultivation, he had a promising future ahead, even if he had failed to awaken. Just as awakeners were respected and essential to this world, cultivators were equally vital despite the two weren't held in the same awe. Nonetheless, both played indispensable roles. At least, that was what Michael had always been told. The world had changed drastically with the apocalypse. It was no longer just a planet, but a realm. Planet Aurora became the Aurora realm. Some of the cracks that had brought monsters into the world remained, and new ones occasionally appeared. While some were filled with dangerous creatures, others served as gateways to other realms. Given their limited numbers, awakeners alone couldn't manage all these challenges. Cultivators became crucial for handling these realms. Awakeners advanced the society, while cultivators defended it. This was a balance that had been instilled in Michael and his peers from an early age. Still, becoming an awakener was more desirable, though. Cultivation required resources, expensive ones that grew costlier as one progressed further. This financial burden alone had already stopped more than half of the population's ability to pursue this path seriously. Generally, only the talented or the wealthy had a significant chance of achieving great success in cultivation. The teacher, who hadn't even smiled much when Lillian Stone awakened, now wore a wide grin as he addressed Brian. "Come stand here and wait," he said, pointing to the spot beside Lillian Stone. The teacher was thrilled that a genius from the school had just become even more exceptional, a super genius. After settling that, the teacher continued with the awakening ceremony, but he was met with disappointment as no other student managed to awaken, not even those with talent in cultivation. This outcome wasn't entirely unexpected. Just because a student had talent in cultivation, did to guarantee they would be able to awaken a class, especially not at the age of 18. Even so, the teacher was quite pleased. The school could now proudly claim 2 more awakeners to its name. The awakening ceremony continued, and soon it was time for the 80th student to step up to the podium. Michael Norman. "Yes, sir." Hearing his name being called out, Michael nervously made his way up to the podium. Since the body's former owner didn't have much presence at school, there was no cheering for him. Reaching the podium, Michael followed the teacher's instructions and placed his trembling, sweat-slicked hands on the awakening orb, anticipation surging through him. Chapter 3. Successful Awakening. Seconds ticked by, and Michael could almost hear his heart pounding in his chest. Each student was allocated 30 seconds with the awakening orb. Any longer was pointless, as it had been proven through countless trials over the years. 10 seconds passed, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 25 seconds. Just as the teacher began to move, ready to dismiss Michael, whose heart had already sunk into bitterness, the awakening orb under his hands suddenly flared with a brilliant light. Instantly, a warm sensation coursed through Michael's body, clearing his mind as a newfound surge of strength flowed through him. The manifestation that accompanied every new awakener soon followed. A black, gloomy energy swirled around Michael, enveloping his body. A dark staff briefly materialized in his hand for a fleeting moment before vanishing into nothingness. Michael stood frozen, momentarily stunned by the sudden turn of events, until the teacher's voice, equally startled, snapped him back to reality. "Michael Norman has successfully awakened a class. Necromancer," the teacher announced. "Another one? Necromancer. Huh? That sounds powerful, and maybe a little bit evil. Be more confident in your speech, brother. It's evil as fuck. Yeah, but, honestly, as long as I can awaken a class, I wouldn't even mind if it involved selling my body. Just admit that you're horny, bro, just like before." The hall erupted in murmurs, though the reaction was more subdued than it had been earlier. It couldn't be helped, unlike the excitement over Lillian Stone's unexpected awakening or the awe surrounding Brian Lyon's transformation into a supergenius. Michael's presence at school had always been negligible, but that wasn't going to be the case any longer. Only a few of his classmates from Class 3, Section N8, were present in the hall, and there were even fewer faces he could recognize. It wasn't wrong to say that he didn't know any of them personally. Good. Gov't, the teacher in charge of the ceremony, repeated his word thrice, visibly pleased. It wasn't that he knew Michael. Rather, it was a surprise to see 3 awakeners emerge from a ceremony he had expected to yield none. Such results were rare, and a complete failure in awakening wouldn't have shocked him or anyone. "Come stand beside me and wait," the teacher gestured, motioning for Michael to join the other 2 awakeners. Yes. Teacher. Still in a daze. Michael nodded and obeyed. Seeing a new comrade, Lillian and Brian gave him a brief nod of acknowledgement, which he returned automatically. In truth, Michael's attention wasn't on his surroundings at all. He could barely catch the bits of murmurs his classmates were whispering about him. He was just too preoccupied to care. His attention was fixed on what had just appeared before his eyes. A blue, transparent panel that floated before his sight. Name: Michael Norman. Race: human. Class: Necromancer Apprentice. Level 1. XX 0/100. Strength: 1.3. Agility: 1.4. Sigstative Sis: 1.2. Intelligence: 4.5. Attribute: 0.0. Skills: Undead Summoning. Undead Revival. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Class skill: Contract slot, 0 halves. Gift: Mark of Origin. Michael's mind hardly processed the details displayed on the panel. It was only now that he realized what had just happened. He had awakened. He had really awakened. A wave of relief and joy washed over him, loosening the tension that had been weighing on his shoulders, making him finally feel relaxed. While this was only the beginning, the most critical hurdle was cleared, no matter what came next. Now that he had awakened, his future brimmed with new possibilities. Michael let out a deep sigh of relief and turned his attention back to what was left of the awakening ceremony. Only 6 students remained, and in about 4 minutes, it could come to a conclusion. Each student would soon return home, left to ponder their future based on the outcome of their awakening. Now that he no longer felt nervous, Michael's mind was free to wander. The most pressing realization was his awakened class, Necromancer. Truth be told, Michael knew little about awakeners or their classes beyond what was taught at school and overheard in passing. What he did know was that classes were generally categorized into 3 broad types: combat, support, and lifestyle. Necromancer seemed like a mix of combat and support, but Michael wasn't entirely certain of that. The school provided only a general understanding of awakeners, without delving deeper into the subject. Perhaps the higher-ups believed the students who were unlikely to awaken didn't need to know more and would benefit more from using their time on their studies or cultivation. There was a common belief that if one cultivated before awakening could lead to the activation of a secondary class. Given that the person had talent, this made cultivation a widely encouraged practice overall. Michael wasn't certain if this limited information was unique to Woodstone Public High School. No, Sen. But he knew one thing for sure: there was no discrimination between classes. No class was considered inherently overly weak. Each class theoretically had limitless potential. An awakener's power depended solely on their own efforts and abilities, according to the teachers. This even applied to lifestyle classes like tailors, which were said to hold extraordinary potential. Michael wasn't sure how true this claim was, but he suspected he would find out soon enough. After all, he was now an awakener, someone who should earn him recognition from the government. Just as Michael mulled over his thoughts and was about to inspect the mysterious panel that had appeared in his mind earlier, the teacher's voice pulled him back to the present. "All right. That's it for today," the teacher announced. "For those of you who failed to awaken, remember that failure to become an awakener doesn't mark the end of our future. During the early days of the apocalypse, at least half of our ancestors, those who played a crucial role in ensuring humanity's survival and advancement. So, what if you didn't awaken?" A murmur spread among the downcast students below the podium, their spirits lifting at the teacher's words. Even Michael couldn't help but find himself impressed by the teacher's words. However, he couldn't ignore the harsh reality that awaited them outside the hall. Perhaps some of the students already understood this grim truck, but for now, they needed something to cling to and help them feel better. One must know that while this world was technically more advanced than Michael's original one, it wasn't all sunshine for the average person out there. For example, traditional jobs, like bankers, had long become a thing of the past, along with many others. Only a handful of establishments still employed humans for the tasks that machines could do, either out of financial strain or because they wanted to be classy, like some high-end hotels. For most people in this world, life was a daily struggle against poverty, with few employment opportunities available for them. It was only after arriving in this world that Michael truly came to appreciate a saying from his old life: technology can be both a blessing and a curse. This desperation to escape their current circumstances was one of the reasons why these students so desperately wanted to become awakeners. If Michael hadn't awakened, he would have been on the receiving end of the teacher's encouraging words. As well, he knew he was truly lucky, sensing his words had struck a chord. The teacher nodded in satisfaction before speaking again. The college exams for both regular colleges and cultivation academies are just 3 months away. Make sure to use this time wisely and prepare seriously. Remember, just because you don't need to attend school again after today doesn't mean you can afford to slack off. Understood? Yes, sir. The students, including Michael and the 2 other newly awakened, responded in unison. All right, you're dismissed. As the students made their way out of the hall, the teacher turned to Michael, Lillian, and Brian. With a warm smile, he said, "You 3, follow me to the principal's office." Chapter 4, Meeting the Principal. The moment the teacher overseeing the awakening ceremony left the hall with Michael and the 2 other new awakeners, they encountered 2 more teachers, a man and a woman, on their way to the principal's office. Trailing behind the male teacher was a girl who seemed to be around 17 or 18 years old. Following the female teacher were 5 younger students, 2 boys and 3 girls. From the brief conversation between the teachers, Michael learned that the students accompanying them had also successfully awakened. The girl following the male teacher was also from Class 3. Like Michael, though he didn't recognize her, this wasn't surprising. After all, Woodstone was a public school with over 600 students in Class 3 alone. The Grade 3 alone was divided into 9 sections, each accommodating up to 100 students per teacher, although the classes rarely reached full capacity, since that would make even the spacious classrooms feel cramped. There were typically no fewer than 60 students per section. The 5 students behind the female teacher, however, were from Class 1. Michael deduced this from their younger appearance, but was still surprised by the number of awakeners from that class. In fact, he was astonished by how many students had successfully awakened this year in general, including the students from Class 3. A total of 9 students had awakened. While this might seem small compared to Woodstone's overall student population, it was significant. Even in Class 1, which consisted mostly of 16-year-old, the age group most likely to awaken rarely had this many 4 awakened in a single year. In Michael's time as senior high, the total number of students who had successfully awakened, from his time in Class 1 through Class 3, including the older students, had barely exceeded 12, and most of those awakeners had been from Class 1. This year, however, not a single student from Class 2, where most students were 17 years old, had awakened. Therefore, the number of awakeners at Woodstone Public High School this year was unusually high, and the success of Class 3 was particularly remarkable, downright abnormal, though the reasons remained unknown. While Michael was lost in his thoughts, they soon reached before the principal's office. Upon reaching the door, the female teacher stepped forward and knocked on the door. "Principal," she called out. "Come in." A voice responded from within, with permission granted. The female teacher took the lead to open the door and walked into the room. Inside, a middle-aged man sat behind a desk. Michael recognized him. It was the principal of Woodstone Public High School No. 3, Mike Bill. It was rumored that he was a powerful knight, though Michael wasn't sure of it since he had never seen the man in action. Setting aside the document he had been focused on, Principal Mike turned and greeted the group with a smile. 9 awakeners this year. Heavens must truly favor our school, the principal remarked, visibly pleased by the turnout of students from his school this year. It was standard protocol for the new awakeners to meet with the principal alongside their teachers. So he had anticipated their visit. Seeing no raising objections to his statement, he knew his assumption was correct. With this confirmation, the smile on Principal Mike's face grew even brighter. "I believe your teachers have already informed you why you're here." "Yes?" Principal Mike asked, glancing at Michael and the other students in his office. "Yes, sir," they replied in unison. "Haha. There's no need to be nervous. What I'm about to tell you is probably something you are already familiar with, but it's still worth saying," the principal said with a light chuckle. Michael and the other students subconsciously straightened their backs, their focus sharpening. The principal was unbothered by their reaction and continued, "As you know, being awakeners, your life and future are no longer the same as those of ordinary people. Power and wealth are now within your grasp, if you're wise enough to seize them. Had you failed to awaken, you would likely be preparing to enter into an ordinary university to continue your education. If you possessed decent talent in cultivation, you might have tried to enter a cultivation academy, but you have successfully awakened. This means that, Instead of attending a cultivation academy or any regular university, you'll be enrolling in an awakened university, where you'll gain the knowledge and skills you need to know to be an awakener. Some of you might wonder if going to an academy is unnecessary. After all, couldn't you just enter the land of origin on your own, like our ancestors, and forge your own path, while that is possible? Anyone with a sensible mind would avoid such a risky approach. Why make things unnecessarily difficult for yourself? So, right now, aside from entering the land of origin, which you now have access to, your top priority should be securing a place at an Awakener Academy. As for learning more about your new identity as an Awakener, you'll need to visit the Supers Association to register as an Awakener after this. This registration is vital as the association will provide you with better resources and detailed information about your new identity and responsibilities. The principal then went on to elaborate on a few other points, some of which Michael and his peers were already familiar with, while others offered new insights. After finishing what he needed to inform, Principal Mike dismissed the students and teachers, asking Brian to stay behind for a private discussion. After leaving the principal's office, the teacher overseeing Michael's awakening addressed their group. As new awakeners, you are required to register with the Supers Association within 3 days. Failing to do so is considered a crime. Though you have some time, I strongly recommend registering immediately if you're free. As the principal also stressed the importance of the upcoming college exams, you need to take it seriously. Just because you're awakeners doesn't exempt you from academic testing. While the requirements might be less stringent compared to regular university students due to your status, your performance still matters, depending on the academy you plan to attend. Anyway, the Supers Association will provide you with more details on this during the registration. So, make sure you don't delay it. For those who aren't in their 3rd year, the teacher addressed as he turned to the younger students from Class 1. You can also attempt the college exams if you think you're well prepared for it. Most academies and the Federation permit this. However, most awakeners who manage to awaken before their 3rd year prefer to focus on home lessons while honing their skills as awakeners, aiming for higher scores when they're ready to enter an academy, with their advice delivered, the teacher and the 2 others offering additional guidance. They left the 9 students and returned to the teacher's office. There was no need to flatter the new awakeners. These were no longer the apocalyptic days, while the teachers were softer with them compared to before. It wasn't to the point of bowing at their feet, but they certainly wanted to form a careful balance, and neither wanted to offend them nor overly indulge them. With the rise of cultivation, awakeners were no longer the sole wielders of great power in the world. Ordinary individuals could also reach similar, impressive levels of strength, though awakeners remained a rare breed and more gifted. Experienced teachers understood this dynamic well. They knew that leaving a good impression was enough, since they didn't have any hidden agendas. Chapter 5, Registering as an Awakener. 1. The students felt uncertain and adrift after the teachers left. But not Michael. He already knew his path ahead and what he needed to do for that. His first priority was to register at the Supers Association, and the second was to inform his aunt about his awakening. Fortunately, Michael was already familiar with the Supers Association, even before he got transmigrated into this world. The original owner of the body had a basic understanding of it, common knowledge among the natives. The Supers Association was an organization that operated under the Federation. It was established by the new government after the apocalypse. The world now had only one ruling authority, the Federation, and beneath it were countries, states, and cities, all part of this new global order. The Supers Association was tasked with managing all supernatural beings in the Aurora realm. Ordinary humans had to reach the level of a rank 1 cultivator before they could register, whereas awakeners were required to register immediately upon awakening. As their transformation into supernatural beings occurred the moment they awakened, the Supers Association's mission was threefold: to protect the general public, oversee supernatural beings, and provide them with various benefits. Michael made his way out of the school compound and onto the bustling street. After a moment, he spotted an empty taxi that happened to pass by and hailed it. "To the Supers Association," he said as he slid into the back seat. "That'll be $1, the driver replied. "Okay." The Supers Association was far from Woodstone Public School. On foot, the journey would have taken Michael close to an hour, but by taxi, it would take no more than 20 minutes. After settling into the passenger seat and the taxi rumbled along, Michael pulled his phone from his pocket. Normally, if the school was still in session, it would have been tucked away in his backpack. But with the college exams approaching and no formal need to attend classes, he had left most school-related items behind. Aside from his school uniform, most of the senior high students who had come to school today had solely come for the awakening ceremony. After this, the school would likely feel noticeably emptier until exams concluded. Though the technology in this world was more advanced than Earth's, it retained some familiar elements. The wealthy used floating cars, while the less well-off relied on traditional wheeled vehicles. Holographic display watches replaced phones for the wealthy, while others were content with traditional phones, despite the world being a mix of old and new technology. Somehow it all blended seamlessly into a strange yet harmonious system that didn't feel out of place. Michael decided to text his aunt instead of calling her. She worked as a cook at a fairly upscale restaurant, so she was likely still busy. Keeping it brief, Michael sent a short message, "I have succeeded in my awakening," just as he was about to set his phone aside. An incoming call lit up the screen. It was his aunt. Michael immediately answered the call. "Aunt, aren't you at work?" Michael asked immediately. It was unusual for his aunt to answer so quickly, even on her days off. "I still am," Aunt Mia replied. "I just happened to be on a short break when your message came through." Michael believed her. He could hear the background noise confirming it. "Time," his aunt called, her tone hesitant, as if she had something on her mind but wasn't sure how to say it. Michael replied with a smile, already guessing what was it that she wanted to ask. He understood her disbelief. Most parents were left in shock when their children awakened on their first try, let alone Michael, who had even less of a chance. "Your message," Aunt Mia began slowly, then paused before continuing. "Is it true?" "It is, Aunt Mia. Today's my lucky day." "Haha." Michael chuckled softly. Aunt Mia let out a small squeak of joy, clearly trying to keep her excitement in check. Knowing she was still at work, Michael decided to wrap up the conversation so that she could get back to her work. "I'm on my way to the Supers Association now, Aunt. I'll talk to you when you get home." Okay. I'll transfer some money to you now. Grab something to eat for yourself and save a little for Lily when she gets back from school. I might be home a little late today." "Yes, Aunt." After exchanging a few more words, they ended the call. Michael let out a sigh as a surge of happiness washed over him. Though he was originally from Earth, he had fully embraced his role as Michael in this world and cared deeply for his family here. Perhaps it had something to do with losing his parents early in his previous life. 10. Away. Both of the Michaels had endured difficult childhoods. After ending the call, Michael closed his eyes to rest, ignoring the occasional glances from the driver, who seemed to want to ask something but was hesitant. Only now did Michael realize how tense he had been back at the Awakening Hall, leaving his spirit exhausted. It felt like it had only been a few minutes since Michael decided to rest when he felt a nudge from the driver. "We're here," the driver announced. Michael weakly opened his eyes, still a bit dazed, but the sight of the two-story building not far from him quickly cleared his mind and brought him back to focus. "Your code, please," Michael requested. The driver nodded and held up his phone. Displaying a payment code, Michael scanned it with his own device, transferring the fare to the driver's account. "Thanks for the ride," Michael said as he stepped out. "No problem. And congratulations on your awakening," the driver added with a grin as he started the engine. Watching the taxi drive away and hearing his greetings before parting, a smile appeared on Michael's face. If the driver wasn't certain when he overheard the conversation Michael had with his aunt earlier, he was now after seeing how focused Michael was on the Supers Association branch right after he got out of the car, shaking his head with a chuckle. Michael refocused, taking a deep breath. He made his way toward the entrance,